Okay, the latest Need for Speed has been out for some time now and hopefully it has some longevity. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Heat, but since it received no future updates, it got stale and boring really quickly. However, with EA's latest release, a lot of fans are hoping for it to be one worth sticking around for. This is my thoughts on Need for Speed Unbound. Let's talk about it. Let me give you the rundown of what this game is about. Now, if you don't want to know the plot, I'll put a timestamp of where to skip to just in case. I'll give you guys some time to do that and...
Let's go!
So you, the player, and your chosen avatar help run a mechanic shop alongside your friend called Yaz and your boss or mentor called Rydell. Both you and Yaz decide to refurbish and soup up one of the 3 junker cars which can be chosen at the start of the game. These are the Dodge Charger RT, a Lamborghini Countach, or a Nissan Silvia K. With this, you began competing in a few races to build up some reputation for yourselves, and obviously going toe-to-toe with the police force, which is run by Morgan Stevenson. On one of these nights, Yaz decides to betray you and Rydell over a disagreement and proceeds to steal all the cars Rydell was working on, including yours, leaving you with absolutely nothing. To help get back on your feet, you start running a taxi service and eventually you meet a girl called Tess, who offers to help you get back into the racing scene. She seems to have some knowledge of upcoming events and new ways to make money, and she eventually leads you to find Yaz again, to which you challenge to get your car back. You're given 4 weeks to get 4 cars souped up into different classes so you can challenge her in the grand. So you, Rydell, and Tess team up to go burn some rubber. It's pretty much like the 2005 Most Wanted storyline. You have a really good car, it gets stolen, you need to get it back. But from then on, you're released into the open world of Lakeshore to begin your grind. It's a city based in Chicago with some similarities to Heat in terms of layout. You've got the main city placed in the mid top right part of the map, and the rest of the area is surrounded by open fields, long stretch highways, canyons, industrial sites, woods, train yards, and mountains. And given that this is strictly a next-gen game, it does look really good, graphically speaking. I've got no complaints there. If you played Heat, you'll notice a bit of a difference, especially with the detail on the cars, the tarmac, dirt parts, and trees. I think solely focusing on next-gen was a good idea. They took advantage of that. The game is also dotted with a series of collectibles like billboards, street art pieces, and bears. Pretty much the same as Heat again, except the bears were flamingos. I think the added driving effects are a great addition, from the cartoon-themed angel wings that appear when you take a jump to the coloured tyre smoke and wheel spin animations. It's something I didn't expect to like. I saw that it was a bit controversial when it was first showcased online, but there is an option to turn this off entirely if you wish. I thought I'd do the same because I expected it to be a bit of an eyesore. Instead, I rolled with it and ended up loving it, but each to their own, I suppose. And it seems to be the first Need for Speed that has added people. Yes, there are now civilians walking around Lakeshore, and like many of you most probably did, was seeing if you could run them over. Yeah, I see you.
You sick son of a bitch!
No, I'm joking. I tried to the first time as well, but no, you can't run them over. They'll do this weird dodge that always pushes them to the side, no matter how fast you're driving. It's like in The Crew too. It seems like they got their inspiration from them. They have people walking about, but you can't run them over. And it makes sense doing it like that. For decades, the Need for Speed games have never had civilians walking around, so it would be a bit crazy to suddenly add them in and allow you to run them over. The game is about racing, not hit and runs, but I do like that it brings life to Lakeshore, rather than giving it a ghost town feel like how it was in Need for Speed Heat. And how can I forget the character design? They've gone for an anime cartoonish style this time. It was something new and personally I liked it. The player model provided the foundation, then you can mess around with the skin color, eye color, head shape, hairstyles, facial hair, tattoos, clothing from some real world brands like Puma, Vans, and Versace, and you could even adjust your voice, which was a cool addition. This cartoonish nature did hold back the customization though, as it's not on the level of detail that the Souls games, Saints Row, Borderlands, or GTA can offer, where you can adjust things to the most specific details like your nose, ears, or head shape, bone structure, facial aesthetics, eye positioning, but again, Need for Speed is more focused on how cars look rather than how your face looks, so it's understandable. Let's hit the streets. Now again, Unbound has taken a lot of elements from Heat, so they've kept the same night and day structure. However, it's no longer split into 2 objectives where you can only make money during the day and reputation at night. They've sort of meshed everything together instead. You don't need a certain reputation level to unlock cars anymore, but you'll get a calendar which displays all 4 weeks leading up to the grand, which helps you keep track of your progress and any key rewards that may be of interest to you, from things like days with increased cash payouts, winning cars, and high heat events. To be honest, I still don't know what some of these icons mean, like the dice one. It would have been cool if they explained all of the key events at some point in the early stages of the game, so you're sort of left to figure it out yourself. Every time you head out, you'll hear updates on what's happening in Lakeshore depending on what happened the previous night, like increased patrol units that are actively looking for racers, and you'll get to talk to Tess and Rydell every now and again. I thought this was cool because whilst most of the phone calls you had with them were for story development and letting you know about important race events, sometimes you could have a casual conversation with them. Tess is more on the bubbly side, she makes a few jokes here and there, clowning you about something, and Rydell, whilst a bit more serious, does say a lot of stupid things which made me chuckle.
Check your glove compartment.
What's this?
Baby powder.
Honestly, I'm afraid to ask.
But I like the sense of normality they gave when having general conversations about a football game or what Tess is going to order for dinner. It was nice to see. The music was alright, I liked some of the songs, but sometimes it felt like the game was purposely playing the same two songs over and over, especially at points where I'd finish a race like this.
Watch. Tough guy, huh? You can tell me. You can tell me what? I keep the.
So yeah, sometimes I feel as though I never got to listen to the whole soundtrack throughout my playthrough, despite there being 70 songs, so that was weird. One thing's for certain though, this is definitely one of the toughest Need for Speed games out there right now. For most of the events you take part in, you have to buy into, meaning you've got to spend money to make money. Let's just say money will be very scarce when you start the game. During your first week, you don't typically take home much. I was earning around 10 to 30k a day, which isn't a lot to play around with given how tough the competition are. What doesn't help is lots of races require a different car tier, and given that you only have one to begin with, there's not a lot of events you can do. Not only that, but the AI in this game show no mercy for you, and given that you have to buy into most of these races, winning would give you the most profit. So you can tell how frustrating it is when you end up finishing 3rd or 4th, because in those positions, you'd end up breaking even or losing money altogether in some cases. So you had to be very selective, not just on the events you chose, but on how you use your money. Do you want to buy a particular upgrade which pushes your tier level up to match the competition? Do you want an engine swap? Do you need better tyres, a better fuel system, suspension, or more potent nitros? Or do you want to save money altogether so you can buy a new vehicle? I felt that you had to be very strict with yourself, and that's why I didn't bother with customization until the endgame. As far as car selection goes, there's now 143 cars in the game, a slight increase compared to its predecessor, but again, it's pretty much the same roster. Sure, they've added a few new ones like the Chiron, Vulcan and Range Rover. You can expect 80% of these cars to be carried over from Heat. One thing I hope for is new vehicles in the update, of course. I think we've got more than enough Lambos, but it would be nice to see Most Wanted Gallardo or the old school Murcielago from the early 2000s. This is just personal preference as I love the way the Lambos sounded in that game. Who knows, there's dozens of new cars they could add. Other racing games had so many options like Test Drive, a game way ahead of its time, but had around the same number of cars as Unbound. And the Crew 2 had great options as well. But maybe they're holding back their budget until the update comes. But back to the gameplay. I was playing on challenging, and given that the AI races were tough to beat in some instances, that led to me restarting. Now restarting gives you a chance to redo an event, of course, and it's good to use if you end up losing an event with a big payout. The only downside is you get a limited number of restarts depending on your difficulty. Because I was playing on challenging, I only had 4 restarts. If you play on the hardest difficulty, you get 2, and on easy, I think it's 10. So if you're choosing the hardest one, you have to be very careful about what events you want to redo, just in case you need to save some restarts for later. I think this game is the ultimate test of money management and your driving ability, but don't feel bad if you don't win every race. I don't think you're expected to. Sometimes rolling with the punches may work out in your favor anyway. During weeks 3 and 4, you'll be making at least 100k a day, so you don't have to worry too much. There are other ways to make some extra cash, like side betting, a new addition to Need for Speed where you can bet on another racer you think you'll beat. Just be careful who you bet on, because races like Shimizu, Medusa or Justicia are rapid, will leave you in the dust for no reason. Seriously, sometimes placing bets may not be a good idea if you don't have the money, because the AI actually respond to that. Like I would bet on someone predicted to finish dead last, and all of a sudden they'll be rolling up to 2nd position before the first corner. Side betting is cool though, given how tight money is at the start of the game, it's a great option. I'd always suggest betting on the lowest predicted racer to minimize cash loss, or it's up to you, you can adopt the mindset of betting money you don't mind losing. Alongside side bets, you can also earn extra cash by completing speed traps or challenges which are displayed at the top left of your map. But I'll be real, I didn't really focus on these because I was too busy dealing with the cops.
God! My God!
Now the cops aren't as brutal as they were in Heat, in fact they're pretty easy to escape sometimes and there are no rhinos so you don't have to worry about them, it's just that they're so annoying. They'll pop up at the most inconvenient times. As soon as you finish an event in the middle of nowhere, a helicopter will spawn in right above you. When travelling to your next event, an abnormal amount of cops will spawn on your route. It's just jarring. If anything, I spent more time off-road and tiptoeing through alleyways, playing hide and seek, waiting for them to go past, just so I can avoid a potential cop chase. This erratic behaviour got some complaints from the people I was driving around with though, so that was funny. Not only that, but they've added a new cop variant which can't be seen on the map, so you do need to pay attention. All of this culminated into a horror film of sorts, not knowing where the cops would appear from, or having to constantly turn your engine on and off whenever a helicopter was about. Now it turns out there is a reason for this. I did hear from a friend and seeing online that cops tend to appear more often on your route if you have set a waypoint on your map. So if you don't want the aggro, just don't set waypoints, they'll be less likely to spawn near you. But if you are still having trouble with cop chasers themselves, there are a few things you can do. There's no pursuit breakers, unfortunately, I do miss those, but there are some cheese spots you can hide in to escape them, like this glitch spot under a bridge. If you park on the edge here, the cops will lose you. They almost always fall off the edge if they try come up behind you, but this doesn't always work, so you gotta watch yourself.
This street rat is nearby. I can smell free engage to the suspect.
Nope.
Dispatch, get on my shift ends. Free engage to the suspect. Dispatch, this is Interceptor. Going after.
Got him. We fucking got him.
Also, whilst in the process of escaping, you can sneak into an event to clear the pursuit itself. I randomly found that out on one of my chases. You have some gadgets to help defend yourself. They're literally stripped from heat, but they've added some new ones. I always recommend damage reduction and repair kits. Also a new one called Undercover Racer. This makes police take longer to spot you, so it gives you a chance to flee. A good way to utilize it is just by speeding past cops. You'll be going so fast the spotting system won't have time to fill up properly. And of course, during chases you can just ram cops off the road. Lightly tapping them will send them flying erratically, and a full speed shunt will instantly wreck them. Taking a series of sharp turns can confuse them and send them off track too, which is useful. So there are ways around it, but I think for me it was more so frustrating because all I wanted to do was my races, make my money and dip. Because the cops were so prominent, I spent a lot of time trying to evade them. At least you get a bit of money for successful escapes. The higher the heat, the more money you get, so they aren't a complete waste of time. Now I did get busted on 2 occasions, and it's the same thing with heat. You get busted, you lose all your money you made for that session, and you move on to the next one. First time I got caught was my own fault. I crashed a lot during this session and didn't bother to repair my vehicle. The second time, well, I got stuck. Instead of closing my game like I should have, I was trying to find a way to reset. Yeah, there's no manual reset button. Usually you'll reset automatically if you're upside down or on your side. Because the game couldn't register that I was stuck, I had to wait for the cops to hone in on my location and bust me. It would be nice if they could add one for situations like this, but yeah, overall the cops aren't too bad, they're just a bit of a pain to avoid sometimes. Now the developers finally added new modes to mess around with. Of course you've still got the traditional races, cop chases, drift events, but now we have modes like delivery, where you have to drop off a high-end vehicle and its conditions depend on the time of day. Daytime it just needs to be delivered within a set time limit. At night though, it needs to be delivered in an acceptable condition to receive a decent payout. And of course you're being chased by the cops, which makes it a bit of a challenge. These were good as you got to play around with some high-end vehicles pretty early in the game. You weren't just tied to your slow class B1 all week, and these cars were usually positioned in places where you could take advantage of its strengths and also just have fun. I mean, who doesn't want to speed down a highway in a McLaren P1, or fly off hills in a golded out Range Rover, or take to the dirt in a custom Mini? This was a highlight of the game for me because you never knew what car you were going to get. It was all random, which made it more exciting. I think the only downside for me is that I have a very bad habit of crashing. It's almost like I do it on purpose. I think I'm a decent driver, but I guess having played Hot Pursuit for so long, I've gotten used to long straight roads instead of these city-based ones. Then you've also got the Takeover, which seems like something of a drift event, but slightly more than that. Hosted by ASAP Rocky, your driving skills are tested as you have to earn the most points not just by drifting, but by using nitros, hitting jumps, and destroying obstacles. The idea is to chain all these together to get the most points, and you got to listen to some of ASAP's comments about your performance, which made me chuckle a little bit when you did terribly. I thought this was meh because it's not that much different from a drift event, so nothing too exciting in my opinion, especially since they don't really pay well. It's like drifting with a bit of wreckfest. Speaking of ASAP Rocky though, I was misled by the trailer. It made it seem like he was going to be the main antagonist for the game, but instead, I think they used him to hype up its release, which is fair. I just wish he had more involvement in the game's story. Don't worry though, he doesn't just appear in the Takeover, you will see him outside of that during your playthrough. You've also got qualifiers, which happen at the end of every week. It's a series of elimination races and the winner receives a big payout as well as a new car. But the downside is buying into this is not cheap, which creates even more financial issues for players starting out. So you've got to make sure you have enough money by the end of the week to buy into it. Think of it as your boss level as you lead up to the grand. That's essentially what they are. Personally, I didn't like how these were set out since it was costing me more money, but you can see how high stakes the game has become, so it may already appeal to some of you guys who like the challenge. There's also passenger SOS jobs where you help bring a racer back to the safe house whilst avoiding the cops. Doing this successfully would award you with one of these safe houses, so doing these ASAP is always recommended. The more safe houses you unlock, the easier it would be to make it home safely with the cash you earned. These were cool events too, because even though you didn't make money from it, the safe houses were just as important, and you got to engage with a variety of characters you actually race against. Hear a bit of their story, which is nice to see. And lastly, we have the winner car events. On some nights, you have the option to buy into a race where the only reward for first place is a new vehicle. Even though you'd lose a couple of grand attempting it, receiving a slightly souped up car in a different class would prove beneficial. It would save you having to buy another car in the future, or if you don't like it, you could sell it all together and make a decent amount of money back. During my playthrough, I only ever bought one car, and that was a Skyline. The rest I've won from races, and they can be really good. So I'd say definitely give these a try, because you can even use these vehicles in multiplayer, which I'll talk about in a bit. Super lastly, let's talk customization. Like I said before, it's something I didn't touch till the end game because I was saving my money for other upgrades. And when you get a chance to pimp out your car, you can expect a lot of options. And I know I've been doing a lot of comparisons to Heat, but again, they both have the same customization options really. Except Unbound has a few more features like new tire options, exhaust tuning changes, and so on. So really it just depends on your level of creativity and how long you want to spend on a car. I hear people saying they spend around 3 to 6 hours customizing a vehicle. Me, I'm not that creative, so I'll either look for a ready-made design or make my physical changes, then add a bit of colour as well as some stickers, and I'm good to go really. Although one of these days I would like to spend a few hours customizing one. I feel like it can be therapeutic. You'd be surprised at what you can build if you take your time with it, and I think Need for Speed provides those tools. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on the campaign. It's significantly a longer story. It took me around 25 hours to beat, whereas Heat took me around 10 to 13, with only 6 missions involving that short guy who says, "I said right now!" But with Unbound, there's a lot to mess around with, so I'm glad they gave us a longer story. I think the only problems were making money in this game. You had a lot to buy into in terms of upgrades, cars, and events like the qualifier, where having insufficient funds halts progression. So making sure you don't overspend is necessary. And the cops, they're more bearable during pursuits. They're not as aggressive as I said, but they make your life hell when you're carrying a lot of money and trying to get back to a safe house. So I think that was the only infuriating thing, just getting into unnecessary chases or having to take longer routes to events. One thing I still wish they added was a new Game Plus option. One of the most obvious and common things video games possess these days is the ability to replay the story. So why isn't it in a Need for Speed game? I actually like the story for Unbound, so it would be cool to relive it again on a harder difficulty, maybe higher heat levels, fewer safe houses, and no death run of sorts where if you get busted once, you have to restart the whole game. I wouldn't mind starting afresh, it's just weird how that isn't an option. I see people finding workarounds by deleting their cloud save data, but there's got to be a more convenient way. Now that I'm more experienced in the game, I would like to see how I perform with the stuff I know now, so that would be great to see at some point. And before I close off, I'll talk about online. So obviously the big question is, will they abandon this game or give it updates? Well, they did say a few weeks after the game's initial release that there will be some news in January, and in January they told us that there'd be new content in March. As of making this video, it is March, so we don't have to wait too long for something. Because right now online is pretty stale. The only thing you can do is race and get your collectibles. The collectibles are cross-save between your story account, which is good, so you can do some cleanup if you wish. Some of the cars you unlocked from the story do carry over, which is nice, and you can make a separate character for online. As far as races go, most people are queuing for S Plus tracks, so be prepared to just be doing those ones. It's a bit of a ramfest, but hey, nothing much you can do about that really, unless they add ghosting to mitigate it. Like the campaign, money is hard to come by. Now to actually get paid for races, I believe you need to complete 3 different ones, and you don't get much, so it's a bit of a grind. If you do have at least one friend to race with, you can just do that. It will set up a private race so it's only you 2 racing, then you can farm money that way. There's still only a maximum of 16 players allowed on the server, and if you want to play with friends, you can only play in a group of 4. Now I didn't even have 4 friends, let alone friends that actually play this game, but it makes me question the choice to go next gen. The graphic improvements were there, but are you telling me they couldn't increase the number of players in the server or allow people to play in larger parties than 4? I'm sure PC, PS5, the Series X, the Series... maybe not the Series S, but these new gen consoles could handle larger lobby sizes, surely. We'll have to wait and see what they do with the supposed update. I'm just glad they're not abandoning it. So overall, online is a bit bare bones at the moment, but for new players, I'd say this is the best time to get the game, since updates are supposedly coming soon. And Unbound has been on sale a few times in the past 3 months. I believe the disc version dropped to £40, which is decent. It's not currently on sale digitally, but you can expect it to go down again soon. I definitely get it if you're a Need for Speed fan. Or if you just love racing, that works too. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on Need for Speed Unbound. It's about time we got a new Need for Speed. I personally enjoyed it. Since finishing the story, I haven't played much since online is kinda boring. I just hope EA know what they're doing to keep this game going for a while. It's been Dre, take care and see you next time. Okay, so just a quick one, as of editing this video on the 15th of March, Need for Speed just posted their first look at the new update. We're getting a new game mode. It doesn't seem like a hot pursuit as it emphasizes taking down cops instead, and there's now money at risk, so it could be interesting. Personally, cops should have been added ages ago, but it's here now, I can't complain. However, it seems like we'll be stuck in daytime for multiplayer, which kinda sucks. We've also got 2 new cars, although only one of them can be unlocked through a challenge, and the other is an EA reward car. It's a start, maybe I'm asking for too much, but I kind of expected a few more cars to be added, and obviously the usual new driving effects and emotes will be available. Based on what I've seen, it's a small update. It doesn't seem like there's any campaign content either, so it could get stale pretty fast, unless they haven't shown everything, because I don't think this should have taken 4 months to release, but hey, they've given us new content, so it's a step in the right direction for Need for Speed. I guess we'll have to wait and see how all this unfolds in multiplayer. The update drops March 21st, I'll see you guys there.